Okay. Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Hayley Dillon. I am leading on accreditation for Nature Towns and Cities, and I sit in the Connect to People with Nature strategy team at Natural England. We have been up and running now in Nature Towns and Cities for over a year, and we'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you a bit more about accreditation so you can find out more about how it might benefit your town or city, and we'll talk through some of the support and guidance available. So we've got a packed agenda for you this morning. So the first thing that's going to happen is I will just give you a little introduction to Nature Towns and Cities and the accreditation. Then I'll hand over to our programme director, Victoria Bradford-Keegan, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about securing funding. Then we have Simon Needle, who is the Green Infrastructure Strategy and Delivery Lead at Birmingham City Council, is going to talk to us about Birmingham City of Nature 25-year plan. Janna Bloice from Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council is going to talk to us about building partnerships. She is a project manager for the urban greening environment. And then Chris Avent from Plymouth, who is a green estate manager, is going to talk to us about strategically planning green infrastructure. Then John Mothersole, who is the former chief exec of Sheffield City Council, who also chairs our decision panel, is going to talk to us a little bit about his role there. And then he'll go on to lead a discussion with our speakers. And then finally, there'll be some time for you guys, the audience, to ask your own questions. So Nature Towns and Cities. So what is it and what's the accreditation? So Nature Towns and Cities is a coalition of public, private and third sector organisations committed to bringing nature and green space to urban areas. And over the next decade, we are aiming to work with 100 towns and cities, supporting them to transform their urban landscapes for people and for nature to bring about multiple benefits for health and well-being, increasing pride and place and climate resilience. So the accreditation, it's a key component part of the Nature Towns and Cities, recognising towns and cities who put nature and green infrastructure at the heart of their places and communities. We have 2 levels for accreditations. We've got foundation, and we're looking for demonstration of good leadership, engagement, and participation of communities and partnerships. And we're looking for really good engagement throughout communities to reach new audience who may not ordinarily be involved, and how you bring those people along through the journey with you. Level 1 is open for applications, and we are accepting on a rolling basis. From a variety of size of place as well. So from local authorities, responsible authorities to say London boroughs, and also smaller organisations such as town councils. But we do ask that whoever is responsible for the overall strategic oversight of those places also is named on the application. Level 2 is coming soon towards the end of the month. Level 2 is all about moving your plans into the delivery phase and vitally securing investment. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Victoria, who's going to talk to us a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Hayley. For those of you who just joined, my name's Victoria Bradford-Keegan. I'm the Programme Director for Nature Towns and Cities. I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking to you about why we have an accreditation and what it's designed to do. So we know that restoring nature in urban areas, putting nature back in where there isn't any nature in terms of creating access to green space, improving facilities to enable people to spend more time in nature close to home costs money, both in the initial creation or improvement, but also in terms of long-term care, maintenance, stewardship of those spaces. So our accreditation scheme has really been designed with securing that ongoing investment in mind. It is a quality mark and does indicate that a place has done all of those kind of foundations things that would set that strategic framework. This is for level 1. Set that strategic framework and show that the thinking around where does investment need to happen, what do improvements need to be, what's our long-term challenge for plan for change, how are we working with communities and other partners, and how are we thinking about investment long term as well. And we'll go on, I'm sure our case studies will go on to talk about that. But in doing so, it is also designed as an assurance product for future funders and investors in the broadest sense of the word. It is designed to show them that you, as stewards of green spaces and in towns and cities, have done that thinking and are a good place to invest because you know about the change that you want to deliver and are well equipped to be able to deliver that change. Through Nature Towns and Cities, to support you on your accreditation journey and also once you're accredited, we're doing a number of things to help you with that. We'll be working with you on investment readiness, and the accreditation really does set out in we hope very clear terms the things that you need to do to become investment ready. So as I've just described, the clear plan, the shared vision for change, thinking about how investment will be secured and how it will be spent over the longer term. But we're also, and we will work with you on that journey to help you go through and meet the evidence requirements. But we're also doing some work with the towns, cities, places that become accredited to help access new and different sources of funding and finance. In particular, we'll be working with our accredited places on the development of new products and mechanisms to receive investment from a broad variety of sources, public, private, third sector, philanthropic. And we'll also be working with our accredited places on national pitches or localized pitches to key investors who we have contact with as part of Nature Towns and Cities and are seeking to fund or to invest in the types of outcomes that you are all really passionate about delivering. So being an accredited nature town or city is about demonstrating that you are that you do know what you're doing, you've got all the foundations in place, and that you have reached a certain quality level for those future plans. But it also is about securing that additional funding. And that's a really key part of the wider activity and support that is available through Nature Towns and Cities as well. If you're interested in finding out more about that wider support that will help you with some of these things and will help you on your accreditation journey, it will certainly come out today, but also please go and have a look at the website where you will be able to find out more about that. So I'm going to leave it there and hand back to Hayley.
Thanks, Victoria. I'm just very briefly going to show you some of the evidence that we require for the level 1. You can find a full list of the requirements on the Nature Towns and Cities website. If you have had a look at the website in the past, you may find it's changed a little bit. We've made some updates this week to make it a little bit clearer and a bit more user-friendly. But essentially, we're looking for evidence in these 3 sections. So setting your vision, building strong partnerships, and a GI strategy and improvement plan. And I've asked our speakers today to focus on one of these sections just to sort of demonstrate how they have gone about putting their evidence together for these sections. And with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Simon.
Thank you very much, Hayley. So yeah, good morning, everybody. As Hayley said, my name's Simon Needle. I work for Birmingham City Council. We've been on this journey with Nature Towns and Cities for a little while now. And unfortunately, we were able to become one of the first accredited places under this. So I'm going to take you through a few slides covering some of our early work and how sort of that led us into the formation of our City of Nature 25-year plan, thinking about some of that inception and consultation work that we were doing. So we can go to the next slide, please, Hayley. There we go. So I think for many people who live outside the city, they don't necessarily see Birmingham as being a green city. We're obviously a large local authority. We cover some 26,800 hectares, and virtually all of that is urban conurbation, so built up areas. But we do have 6,200 hectares of green infrastructure in the city, and the map there is trying to illustrate some of our larger parks and green space. But as you can see, it's not necessarily that evenly distributed across the city, which is one of the issues that we were looking at. So yeah, we've got 3,500 hectares of public open space, just over 600 parks and public open spaces, 250 miles of rivers, brooks and streams across there. So really, people are not going to be too far away from green space, but it's about the quality and distribution of those. Can we just move to the next slide, please, Hayley? So yeah, just thinking about those challenges. So this was really, I suppose, where our starting point in thinking about the benefits of green space to both the natural environment for biodiversity, but also for public health and climate, I suppose, adaptation and mitigation. So yeah, we've got population 1.1 million and rising, one of the youngest populations in Europe. We've got large numbers of our wards in the top 10 percentile for in-season multiple deprivation. There's areas of the city that suffer from high levels of years life lost, poor air quality, urban heat island, and with our current development plan, there was a need for 89,000 additional homes by 2031, but not enough space for all of that. And of course, when we were looking at the City of Nature plan or coming into the Future Parks Accelerator, that was the point at which the COVID pandemic hit as well, and that was the bit that really brought to the fore the inequity or inequality, the inequity of accessible green space, particularly for some of our more diverse communities. And so, working on that program, we liaise with other departments such as public health, our highways teams, planning and development, the parks teams as well, in looking at how we could move forward and sort of see what we could do to balance up that equitable access. So, next slide, please. Yeah, I mean, I don't expect you to be able to see anything on this slide here, but it just gives a bit of an indication of some of the early work that we did, looking at combining data sources, thinking about planning policy statements in terms of the level of provision of public open space on a per 1,000 capita basis, which was set out, and where we physically were in terms of that provision. And you can see just by the colours on there that anything that's basically in red or in that sort of pinky shade is where we were sort of under provisioned for public open space. So while some of our 69 wards across the city are really well provisioned, there are quite a lot that don't have that level of provision for accessible green space. And if you see the column that's in that sort of bluish purpley colour there, the darker the colour, the higher the level of deprivation is. So you can see there's a bit of a correlation there between the amount of accessible green space and the deprivation. So they weren't having that access to there. And one of the other columns, the very first one, the third column from the left is actually the urban canopy cover as well. So we were looking at urban canopy cover, provision of green space in the season multiple deprivation, and also thinking about where we were moving to in terms of development as well. So within our development plans, we've got land allocated or highlighted for potential development. What was the level of new residences going to come forward from that? And if we did nothing, so in that most right-hand column, if we did nothing in terms of looking at provision of green space, what did that mean, in terms of that level of provision? So in quite a few instances there, we were looking at, furthering that gap of the level of provision required. So yeah, it's quite a stark picture, I think, that painted. And, love them or hate them, spreadsheets are sometimes useful for just painting that initial picture. So next slide, please. So that sort of spreadsheet with that data and then overlaying with a few other environmental factors gave rise to our environmental justice map, which forms, I suppose, the core of our City of Nature 25-year plan. It's looking at those wards where people have got those impacts of climate factors, the indices of deprivation, the accessibility to green space, thinking about flood risk, all those things, and overlaying those. Oh, can we go back? Go back. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, think about how those were the most impacted. And as you can see there, we've got it is a bit of a traffic light system, but those wards that were least impacted, had highest access to those, or didn't have those climate risk factors, were in green, moving through to those that are most impacted in the red colouring there. And those are actually some of our most deprived communities. They're our most diverse communities. They're also areas where we're seeing biggest amounts of regeneration, and also potentially the biggest increases in population as well. So these would definitely gave us an opportunity to focus on where we needed to think about trying to enable or lever in further green space, and certainly engage communities with their green space more. Next slide, please. So as part of this process, we need to go through some consultation, and one of the things that we can do is we can run normal consultation exercises, and you generally know the sorts of people who are going to be responding to those. So we were thinking about how we were actually going to lever in, I suppose, a more diverse audience across both age, gender, ethnicity, religion, etc. And so we undertook a process of commissioning these Earth stories, and we've worked with community-based organisations. We commissioned those to actually work with those communities, the people who are members of those organisations, to give us a series of, I suppose, stories, and to give us their feedback on their memories of parks or green space or connecting with nature. And that sort of really helped us build a picture of how people felt and sort of connected to the natural environment, whether that be here or whether for some of those that was actually something that sparked a memory of their homelands, particularly for those who are sort of more recent migrants to the UK. And we had a whole range there. So we've got stories from our local councillor through to people who, I think we've got the one that's there is Nathan, who's 13, who was sort of very interested in the climate emergency and thought it would be too boring for Birmingham to be or all houses, flats and factories and offices, and he thought that we should be having more parks in the future. And there's quite an interesting, funny little comment in there about having interesting things for the younger kids to do, but that we still need some flower beds for the older people to look at. So it was a bit interesting that actually is thinking about what different age groups need from these green spaces. Like I said, that sort of helps shape our framework. Next slide, please. So I know Janna's going to cover some of this about building partnerships, but I can't sort of really not include that in this development process. So part of what we were looking at is this needed to be a whole city process, a whole city plan, and obviously as a city council we weren't going to be able to deliver that on our own. And so thinking about how we would work with other organisations, other delivery partners in the city was fundamental to this. And so we did start to form the City of Nature Alliance, and that is a range of organisations. Some of them are quite small organisations through to national charities and national organisations as well, that are all working towards delivering the aims and objectives of this plan. So if we go to the next slide, please. This just gives a bit of an indication of some of the range of groups that we've got on there. So we've got people like Birmingham Open Spaces Forum, which is our umbrella group for our Friends of Parks groups. So they provide a sort of coordinating and a feed through channel to us from all of our sort of 140 odd Friends of Parks groups that we've got. We've got the Birmingham Black Country Wildlife Trust, which is relevant to our local area. Birmingham Tree People. We've got our Active Wellbeing Society. Patchwork Meadows, which is on there, is just a single person, but she's Alison. But she's doing sterling work in engaging with groups, looking at working with them, creating small scale meadows within either school grounds, on a street corner. So there's a whole range of different groups on there that are working and pulling towards delivering the shared vision. The next slide, please. So all of this work culminated in this looking at the City of Nature plan and sort of dividing up our thinking into 5 key themes. And this is the bit that underpins our plan for the next 25 years. So we were looking at having a green city, a healthy city, a fair city, an involved city, and a valued city. So thinking about those green city aspects, that's about thinking about the net zero ambitions and having sustainable, inclusive, green and resilient development. Thinking about that biodiversity elements there. The healthy city is about having a place that will provide opportunities for community growing, for community engagement, and activity, places where people can enjoy nature safely. The fair city, again, is that looking at equity of access and use of green space across the city. The involved city, again, is about having those passionate advocates of nature and enabling them to become green champions, recognising the importance of the work that they're doing and look after our green and blue spaces, and giving opportunities for our children to learn about the wonders of nature as little green young green champions, and the citizens we encourage to be to undertake, I suppose, more focused activities and take on stewardship. And the last bit was about the value part there, and that's looking about that sustainable finance framework and the circular economy, and thinking about how we build a funding model for the city's green and blue spaces going forward. And I suppose quite relevant really is about making that visible, making visible the invisible benefits to the city of good quality green and blue space. And I think that was something that's really helped us promote the value of parks and green spaces, although many of us working in the industry sort of recognise this and know this. How we communicate that to others and really show the value has been key, I think, to raising the sort of both raising the bar on that. Next slide, please, Hayley. So with those five sort of core themes there, we were looking at this 25-year plan with an initial 12-month, I suppose, starting point. So we were looking at trialing these initiatives in one ward in the city. So we've got 69 wards, like I say, so there's a big area to cover. But we were looking at that and implementing, I suppose, what we call the Fair Parks or Future Park standard, thinking about how we deliver all of those aspects of those five standards in those green spaces. We then have moved beyond that now into our first 5 years. So we're working on the 6 priority wards that was come out from that environmental justice mapping. So looking at how we engage those communities, how we improve those green spaces within those sites, and working with our colleagues in planning and highways, how we can sort of help either enhance or create new spaces or link those spaces together better. So thinking about our highways improvement plans, if we're delivering a new transport infrastructure project, how do we incorporate new green space into those to link together some of those existing park spaces so that we've got a greener route to link these together. And then moving on, we're looking that sort of 10-year ahead, so we'll be rolling that out to the next set of wards while still trying to keep the plate spinning on those first ones, and thinking about how we put future designations in as well. So we've got some big linear sites which are, you know, got a number of different local designations, but can we bring those together into sort of a more cohesive landscape scale designation on there? So next slide then, please, Janna. I think we're not far off the end here. Hayley, sorry, not now. So one of the things that we did do early on as well was we commissioned a health economic assessment and natural capital accounts of our existing green infrastructure, and this is about, I suppose, providing a baseline and an opportunity for us to monitor and making those benefits sort of a bit more visible. So here we can see that for out of those accounts, it shows that for each pound the council invested in its parks and green space, it was returning over £24 to society, and that was including £1.60 directly to the council through direct either parks income such as fees, but also increases in property values and the council tax. Now there's a bit of a debate there whether we should be putting up house prices and gentrification, but overall over 25 years the natural capital asset value is in the order of 11 billion. So that was looking at returning around £600 million in annual benefits each year. So and we've got going down, which is particularly relevant for our public health colleagues, and has certainly been a catalyst in them funding our work, continuing to fund some of our delivery in the green spaces, is looking at those benefits for physical and mental health, and the fact that, you know, the parks and green space are estimated to add more than 3,300 quality adjusted life years each year to the citizens. So thinking about those mental health and well-being benefits that are provided indirectly and directly from engagement with natural green space. So there's a few other stats on there as well about the amount of interception of pollutants and carbon sequestration stuff, which also adds to that whole climate agenda there. But then we've also looked at what would happen if we were to implement all of the aspects of the City of Nature plan, and that would be looking to deliver an additional £1.65 billion in asset value, so a 14% increase if we were able to deliver everything that we said we wanted to do in terms of the accessibility of green space within the city, and also that's another £13.5 billion in it would result in a natural capital benefit asset value, sorry, of 13.5 billion. So that's an increase on that. So this is how we're going to monitor going forward, thinking about, can we review our green infrastructure against these natural capital health accounts? Can we see the increases in values as we move forward? Next slide. I think that's the last one then, Hayley. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into how we were moving forward, how we were considering different sets of data, bringing those things together to form our sort of vision and plan for the future.
Oh, thank you so much, Simon. So there's lots in there, some really great examples of how you've engaged people and used your partnerships to develop your vision. So that's super. Thank you. I'm going to introduce Janna now from BCP Council, who's going to talk about building partnerships.
Thanks, Hayley. Hi, everybody. So my name's Janna Bloice. I'm a project manager down at Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council. Let me just get my notes on the right screen, 1 second. I think something that just struck me while in that last presentation is that so many of us are doing similar work. We've got different labels for things, different name for things, but we were lucky enough to experience the Future Parks project, and I've been involved in that for the last sort of 5 years. And that and Nature Towns and Cities has sort of directed us in quite a sensible route that we've all figured our own way too. But I think now Nature Towns and Cities is articulating that route of get your strategies right, embrace, nurture your partnerships, engage with your community, understand what your community, the different groups in your community, what they want, what's a priority. Get gradually more granular in your planning. Your green infrastructure strategy won't be the end of it. You'll then think, oh, but I need to know exactly what we're going to do in exactly what place. And so certainly our experience has been we gradually get more granular in that way, so that you're ready for that investment that we're all looking for. We're all doing some form of environmental justice work, so that directs where we work in our towns and our places. That might be, for us, that's lent heavily on tree equity scores, so that's linking existing tree canopy with other kind of more social data and capacity for tree growing. That's told us the wards within our place that are less well served for green infrastructure more generally. And then we all kind of peel off and do things that are particularly based on what has excelled in our place. It might be particular groups that you're working with or particular elements of your place. And for us, we've had a really great partner in the Parks Foundation, and that's what I'm going to talk a bit more about today. We are a council that has come to, or perhaps we could move the slide on now. We're a council that has come together in with three councils, Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, that came together back in 2019, just at the time that we got our Future Parks funding, actually. Prior to that, the Parks Foundation had been in place since 2015 through various Nesta projects and things like that. Well, I think we saw particularly here a benefit of having a charitable partner that could bring different things to the table and do different work and take advantage of different things. We're a place with 2,500 hectares of green space, publicly accessible, lovely countryside all around. The outsides of our place, we've got a 21% tree canopy cover, so we're quite well blessed. But like a lot of places, our place is quite disparate in that we've got some places that have got over 40% tree canopy cover and some that have got less than 5%. So we want to work in those places that are less well served, or we want to prioritise working in those. thinking about partnerships, whenever we think about delivering anything good, it's never done in isolation, and we're always done with other people. So when I think of some important projects that we've trying to deliver locally, the Stour Valley Park comes to mind, which is a 25-kilometre river corridor project with 41 landowners, 17 strategic partners. Trying to get a strategy and a business plan agreed by all of those people, that was difficult. And if anybody felt unreasonably excluded from decisions, that quite derailed the work, really. So it was really important that we nurtured all of the people around that table. We've got smaller greenways that connect in with that. We've got the Little Down Greenway we often talk about trying to unlock. There's 9 landowners in that one, some big ones as well. We've got JP Morgan regional head office, we've got a Premiership football ground, we've got ourselves, we've got a leisure centre, we've got the hospital, we've got 5,000 people daily trying to travel up and down that corridor. So we need to all be in step with what we're doing in order that that project coherently brings something great. Yeah, so we had the Parks Foundation from 2015, and we've gradually, and again through the support of the Future Parks project, been able to support the foundation to become more and more independent. So small things from independent IT to the council to I'll talk a little bit more later about our more sort of formalised governance structures. We became a nature town in summer last year, or a group of nature towns, if you like. And the Parks Foundation is very much a strong partner within that. I thought I would just talk very briefly as well about some of the things that the foundation bring when they do a project. So we've recently done an urban greening project, and the foundation delivered wildlife gardening guides, talks at different places, coaching events for residents, how to dig a pond or start a compost heap, swift towers, ponds, community planting in 12 schools, improved planters in a housing estate, sustainable drainage in parks, relaxed maintenance, volunteering in green spaces, lots of things that it's more difficult for us as a council to get involved in. If we could go to the next slide, please. So when I was thinking of this presentation, which unfortunately was only yesterday, I thought, well, I'm going to talk through what's important here and nurturing our partnerships. And I thought, well, nature towns and cities are bound to have great resources online around that. And so I went in and had a look, and there are tons on the Nature Towns and Cities website. So if you are not sure, please go in and look at that. And I've tried to include some of these in what I'm going to talk about now, but also what I think has been really important locally. So prioritizing your partnerships, there's different ones and they do different things and they please different people. So try and work out what those are and who they are, and kind of the ones that you need to nurture a bit more than others. You're going to have partnerships on multiple scales, so and again they do different things. So we've always looked at our work and wanting to find answers at strategic level, but also very much at a neighbourhood scale as well, so that we can talk to people about it. Championing what you do is so important, and getting people on board and getting people inspired. So working at those multiple scales, again, really important. Right, so the framework, we were really lucky because we have been supported financially to do some of this work, and I'm not sure if we would have been able to do it otherwise, but I did want to say today that if anybody is looking for a memorandum of understanding, a project agreement template, we've got sort of process documents of how we make decisions in parks and make sure that those are well understood and scrutinised by members. So that sort of came up as an important thing that we wanted to do, and we were able to commission a law company to help us do that. It enables us to give work and assets to operate to the foundation without going through a full tendering process. And I didn't want to say that in a way that implies, gosh, tendering and procurement rules get in the way. And it's not meant in that way, but the foundation manage some very marginally profitable businesses for us, and therefore to add in a complex tendering process is counterproductive for all parties. And we've got sort of break clauses in there, and we get to see what money is being made at those places, so that should that community cafe suddenly become incredibly financially significant, then obviously we would go through a proper tendering process. But the agreements that we've got in place at the moment allow us not to do that, and having that framework enables that process to be fully transparent, which I think is really, really important. Something that we have had to make sure we do is keep all our wider partners happy with the partnerships that we've got, so that members are comfortable, other community groups are comfortable as to why we are working so closely often with the Parks Foundation. Diversity of thought and priorities. Our Parks Foundation team or the Parks Foundation team have a whole bunch of differently qualified, inspired, different people, and they have their own onward partnerships. They aren't the council, and therefore when I go and join in a volunteering group, it's amazing how easily the volunteers are happy to slate the council and say how brilliant it is to be working with the foundation. So that's okay, that works, doesn't it? They're able to bring money in a different way and have a wider reach than we do. The foundation are still a relatively small charity, and therefore sometimes they're able to do things a bit quicker. Oh gosh, that's my 10 minutes, than we as a council are able to do. Should I just carry on and do a couple of minutes? No one's shaking their head violently. So I'll just really quickly go through the last slide. Understanding your aims, that's obviously really important. Funding opportunities, a charitable partner has access to grants, donations, philanthropy, etc., that the council will be unable to tap into, and that's been really beneficial to us. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to give time and to value those partnerships that you have. They need nurturing. They don't manage themselves. We don't all stay on track through no effort. So, and that's difficult because none of us have got time or enough time to do that kind of softer work as much as we would like to. Reviewing your partnerships, I think, is again really important. We have a sort of yearly sit down to make sure that we're all working in the same direction and in the right way, talking to the right people, making sure others that need to know what's going on do, and that we're sort of synchronized. I wanted to talk really quickly about today's workplace and how I think that makes working in partnership even more important. I'm sat in an office today with very few people in my own team, and that will be the same for many other people on this call. We don't have those conversations around the desk, unfortunately, in the same way that we all used to in lots of places. So nurturing those partnerships and that sort of cross-team working is really important. I'll stop there. Thank you, though, for listening.
Sure people will find very beneficial. So thank you very much. So now I'm going to introduce Chris Avent at Plymouth City Council, who's going to talk about strategically planning green infrastructure.
Great, thank you, Hayley, and good morning, everybody. Really great to be here today to give you a little bit of an insight, I think, in terms of some of the work which we've been undertaking down in Plymouth over recent years, and just particularly focusing on the theme around strategically planning green infrastructure. It's kind of one of that third thread of the Foundation accreditation for nature towns and cities. I think it's really interesting listening to Simon and Janna talk, who've obviously worked with closely for a number of years now on the wider Future Parks programme, just how interconnected these three threads are in terms of the accreditation. There's not one that sits kind of in isolation from another. So there'll probably some repetition in kind of some of the points that I'm making here, but very much kind of sort of focusing on what we've done in Plymouth and hopefully kind of giving a bit of insight to some of the learning on that. Apologies to myself, I don't know what's happened with my slides. They've gone really weird formatting. But anyway, that was just a technical thing yesterday. I thought I'd solved, but clearly not looking at the screen. So my name's I'm Chris Avent, as I said. I have been the Green Estate Manager. I'm now Strategic Programme Manager for our Natural Environment Service in Plymouth, which is kind of currently restructuring, and that's kind of one of the kind of outcomes from our work over the last few years, is bringing together a service which is more joined up and strategically kind of focused on delivering natural environment services. The city. If you jump onto the next slide, thank you. So just to kind of sort of say, so what have we produced in last year? We produced our Plymouth Plan for Nature and People. So it's our 5-year strategic delivery plan around how we are going to deliver a whole range of positive outcomes for people and place in the city. I'm going to talk a little bit around kind of some of the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle which kind of predated and built us towards that point in terms of the strategic kind of like thinking to enable us, and also talk a little bit about how the process we followed to bring together that plan, which effectively articulates the vision which has been developed over time for our natural spaces in and around the city. And just to say, I think it's important. I think Janna's referenced this. We can produce these strategies and these ways of working, these clear plans, but however, they need constant attention. That vision and how we deliver against those plans, we constantly need to kind of keep an eye on. And that's one important aspect of what we were putting in this plan. How we want this plan to function and work was actually kind of it was a delivery program. It's very much focused on delivery, and I'll come to it at the end. But when one of the back end of this plan is all about that 5-year delivery program with key kind of outcomes, outputs and measures of what we want to deliver and achieve for the city. And I think, the other thing to say is just I think the important bit that we set out to do from the beginning was thinking about how we capture and link across a broad range of strategic objectives. This wasn't a plan for, well, it says it in the title, doesn't it? It's not a plan for nature, it's a plan for nature and people. And the people bit is very much about thinking about how our natural environment kind of links into those wider societal challenges and the wider growth opportunities of the city, and making sure that we've joined all the dots so that what this plan does isn't just for us delivering kind of the service, but actually is from a council perspective and from a partner perspective, kind of really kind of knits together those threads so we have a kind of holistic approach to delivery. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to start by just talking about a few of the, at least just a few of kind of some of the things I kind of threw in there in terms of jigsaw pieces. You can see what I've done there in terms of what we kind of need to think about in advance of putting together a plan. So, I mean, these aren't, this isn't everything, and there's just one way of interpreting this, but I just wanted to point on a few things which in Plymouth we were fortunate enough and have done work on to enable us to kind of put together a strategic delivery plan. So one aspect in there is about our local plan. So in terms of strategic kind of join up, then we spent an awful lot of time working with planning colleagues in terms of ensuring that what we're talking about kind of links into that kind of longer term planning framework for the city. So those local plan objectives. So we were fortunate enough from work we did many years ago, back in the 2010s, was making sure that we had some key objectives around the value of nature, for health and well-being of the city, for our natural infrastructure being a key part of the growth kind of agenda, and kind of need to be incorporated into thinking. In terms of, I'm not going to do this in any particular order, that support as well. So kind of a lot of work in the background to ensure you've brought together the support of your not only elected members, but kind of obviously senior people in director level, kind of a corporate management team level, who are going to kind of understand the work that you're doing and how it knits together importantly with other corporate objectives. That was one thing I said we kind of put really great time and effort into doing. Having a really good data set in the background is really important. Ensuring that you've got, you're constantly still delivering, so that you're not just talking about plans, but actually you've got a track record and you've got case studies to bring to bear on this work is really important, to bring it to life and articulate that, and to show that the impact that you're delivering. So making sure that you've got a clear idea of what you're delivering for and for whom. Those partnerships, which Janna's talking about there, absolutely key. So kind of nurturing those partnerships through this work and making sure that you've got the buy-in and the support not only internally but externally, really important element. That links across the community, understanding your community's needs, kind of really being able to talk about that. And as those different scales come into play, understanding kind of at a city scale what you're trying to do, but also not forgetting kind of at a neighbourhood scale where the real impact is going to be felt. So kind of really kind of getting under the skin of that. And like Simon talked about from a Birmingham point of view, really starting to think, it's impossible to cover every neighbourhood all at once. So where do those priorities need to lie? Where do you want to focus your effort from a community perspective? And yeah, kind of building that vision together collectively with people to make sure that when you come to the point of putting together a plan, you've got these pieces in place, and having a really, it goes without saying really, but having a really dedicated team, making sure that you've really got kind of the skill sets, the knowledge and experience to kind of bring this work together, to make sure that you can do it justice. There's no perfect, there's absolutely none. I'm not saying that we kind of had all these things sewn up, but it's been good enough for making sure you've just got an awareness and enough kind of the grassroots in place to make sure you can build from it. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a overview of our plan for nature and people. So what is it? Is that a strategic vision? It's a strategic delivery plan for kind of how we utilise our natural environment for the broad objectives of the city. So how are we going to deliver against the growth agenda? How are we going to deliver against kind of the needs from a health and wellbeing perspective, the local economy? We spent an awful lot of time engaging with internal colleagues on making sure that the real hooks were kind of embedded in this plan from those perspectives. We did similarly as sort of Janna and Simon have described, work in the background. We did our natural capital accounting. We built up our evidence base in the background to make sure that kind of where we had alignment, we could really point to the evidence for that, and make sure that they were linked into the plan. Obviously addressing kind of, it goes without saying, kind of the challenges around climate and nature emergencies, making sure that kind of we link across to the national picture and the local perspective on that is really, really important. And using tools like the Natural England Green Infrastructure Framework, which is really important. But there's so much out there. We're in a really great period, I think, but also quite a challenging period. There's lots of knowledge, lots of tools out there for us to utilise and bring together. And sometimes it's kind of knowing which ones, to use best. So, from a Nature, Towns and Cities perspective, some of the case studies which are building up on that resource page, I think, hopefully bring that to life for people and maybe help people to shortcut a little bit, where they can kind of pick and choose the right things which kind of work for their agenda. Plymouth, we've got a massive USP around green and blue, and that's kind of clear, and that does sit within kind of our visitor strategy and kind of economic development strategies, growth strategy of the city. But kind of being able to make sure we have the evidence behind that and kind of keep that up to date in terms of what those places are was really important. And importantly, we're building on innovation. So we've been delivering for a number of years against this agenda. We're fortunate enough to have kind of accessed national programs like the Community Forest Programme, our National Marine Park, the first one in the country. We've accessed kind of significant amounts of funding. We're delivering against that. We really wanted to use this plan to kind of showcase and bring kind of the learning together from that and actually set out a kind of a plan where we've been delivering quite a project-focused way, kind of knitting that together into be a more program orientated direction, which kind of built on that. So it kind of articulates that to the public as well. So it's a comms tool as well. Next slide, please. So purpose of the plan, as I've said already, we were making sure that this plan aligned around the growth agenda of the city. I mean, if you are in a place where you're working with planning colleagues, it's not an easy time to be sort of thinking about this. Every place will be different. In Plymouth, we've got a very significant growth agenda linked to kind of investment coming into our kind of into the dockyard over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. We're kind of working with that, but also we're in a time when national planning policy frameworks are being thrown around, consulted on, revised and updated. So working with planning colleagues was a real challenge, and we've kind of really got to keep paying close attention to that, because that will continue to evolve. But that's one really kind of key element which we focused most time, as well as working with our economic development team on that. Our plan is built around 5 key pillars. Interestingly, it wasn't it's coincidental, I think, in many ways. But if you look at the Birmingham City of Nature plan, very similar in terms of kind of those objectives around nature richness, around focus on health and well-being and activity. Inclusivity is an important theme, and engagement and kind of people being empowered to kind of get involved and steward kind of their local spaces, as well as kind of bringing forward innovation and investment. So those kind of key pillars kind of really set out and drive forward our work with key kind of outcomes associated with them. And as I said, our plan kind of has kind of is bookended by a measurable delivery program. Really important. It was really important for our members to have some clear, obviously political kind of elements. So that's really broad. That delivery program it looks at some quite sort of specific and sort of discrete kind of neighbourhood kind of activity, but it also looks at some quite sort of citywide strategic activity, like producing kind of an investment prospectus for the city, from a natural capital perspective, and kind of wider nature recovery network plans, but also delivering kind of in communities with neighbour level. Next slide, please. So just to kind of touch on the importance of people and the process that we undertook in developing our plan. So we took 18 months to pull this together. So we kind of worked with over 1,000 people in the city in terms of kind of direct engagement. So this was built from kind of work we'd done previously. So we're already working in partnership. We had an awful lot of learning and understanding of the city and the needs. But to build the plan itself, we kind of had 2 phases. Our first one was kind of a broad citywide campaign, which then focused us into key themes, which we took from the public response. And then we really focused in on having focus groups. We ran a series of focus groups this time last year, which kind of really enabled us to have some really deep and rich conversations with people across the city to really understand and make sure that the plan represented kind of what that need was at community level as well as at a city strategic level. And then at the back end of that, the third step was obviously producing a draft plan and consulting on that to make sure that what we produced actually kind of talked to people and enable them to give that feedback. And it was great to see that we had kind of majority sort of positive response from that, and really good feedback in terms of the process which we'd undertaken and the way in which we'd engage with people in the city. Next slide, please. It's the last one. But just what's next? As I said, this is producing this kind of strategic delivery plan isn't about just producing the document to sit on a shelf. This is very much around ensuring that we're going to deliver against this. So we've got a commitment in the plan. We had a steering group to produce the plan, and we're committed to diversifying that steering group and making sure that there's wholly representative of the city, so like there was some oversight and ongoing accountability across wider stakeholder groups. So that's kind of a piece of work that's in progress at the moment. We're kind of we're delivering against the plan. That goes without saying in terms of what we're doing, building those partnerships, maintaining and sustaining those partnerships to build more. And then particularly kind of thinking about how we can grow that, how can we grow the impact which we achieve? How can we knit together, as we said there, that investment prospectus and those investment propositions so that actually we can bring in the necessary funding to kind of make sure we've got a sustained path to delivering against this plan. And then monitoring and reporting is really key. I think one thing we've learned from doing this is that you can never have enough monitoring and reporting, but when you do it, you need to have it in an organised way so that actually the data that's coming through is really impactful. I'll stop there. I wasn't timing myself, but I reckon I've probably hit 10 minutes. So I will stop and pass that. I think there's quite a few questions in the chat, so it'd be good to have some further discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for talking us through that. That was brilliant. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. Okay. So just before I introduce John, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the process of applying for accreditation. So once you are ready to apply, you submit an application form via the website with all your supporting evidence, and that comes to us, and we have a team of 3 assessors from Natural England and the National Trust. So we've got a pool of assessors, but we choose 3 people who go on and assess your application. And then if we feel like it has met the requirements, the application then goes on to our panel of independent experts whose bios you can read all about on the website. And John is currently chairing our panel, and the panel has sort of the ultimate decision on whether you were awarded the nature town or city. So we've invited him along today to speak about his role there. So John, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Hayley. Fascinating to hear the journey of the 3 places so far. So as Hayley says, I chair the panel, and it's a panel of very enthusiastic people, very engaged. And the first thing to say is the panel wants you to succeed. we're firm believers in this initiative and this accreditation. So we don't try to sit there in judgment, and we certainly don't mark homework, and we don't look to fault applications. Now, I think when the panel members make comments, they're really trying to make it from an added value point of view rather than to catch anybody out. So, you should approach the whole process enthusiastically, energetically, but know that you're working with positively minded people who want individual plans, individual places to succeed. But the panel is there to do a job. And if we just perhaps run through not the names of the people, but the skill sets we have around the table, it'll give you a clue as to the sort of things that we will be looking at. And it echoes what we've heard from the three places this morning. We've got strong local authority representation there around the panel. And obviously I used to be the chief executive of a city council, so I bring that perspective as well. We have transport people around there. We've got people who are on a day basis managing parks and natural spaces. We have policy people. We've got planning and regeneration experts there, and it's interesting to hear Chris's comments around how do you knit a nature town and city into a place that is growing and therefore is building. We've got people who are sort of rooted in local control, local democracy and community empowerment. And we've also got people from a public health perspective. And my experience to date is the comments have been probably strongest from the panel on the public health benefits side of this initiative. So maybe there's just a little sort of thing to bear in mind is don't forget to draw out the health benefits of this. And I saw in one of the earlier chat comments a comment about why isn't there more NHS money going into this? And I think actually these plans, if the partnership is right, are the routes into getting NHS money being spent in a more sort of preventative, holistic way than perhaps you feel is the case at the moment. For me, why did I agree to chair the panel? It interests and excites me, but particularly two things. One is I was really taken by the holistic nature of the initiative here. This is not just about a niche development or policy within a place. But secondly, and perhaps most importantly, the accreditation is really designed to see nature in its broadest sense as part of the mainstream way in which a place defines itself, runs itself, and promotes itself. And if what you're doing is rooted in the mainstream of how a place operates, it's got so much greater chance of success. Because it doesn't just become a sort of a mission of enthusiasm, or if you might say, a mission of moral and principle. It becomes a pragmatic way in which a place succeeds. And I'm particularly taken by the fact that in time, this accreditation could be useful in promoting your place as a place in which to invest. Because we know that the business sector, you might have a personal view as to how they are for this agenda, but they recognise that having environment sustainability as part of their mission actually promotes their brand as well. So I was particularly taken by the mainstream connectivity of this. But for me, I sort of operate quite often with 3 Ps in mind, and perhaps just bear this in mind. And these 3 Ps are people, place, and partnership. And if we just unpack those briefly, the people bit is actually not just are the people of the place involved, but is the plan aiming to impact positively upon the lives of the people of your places? That to me is fundamental and important, and actually is a point of equity as well. And one of the speakers spoke about, I'm not sure what phrase they used, but in essence, it was about the inequity of access to nature at the moment. So is it going to be impactful upon people? The place bit is your proposal rooted in the totality of your place? Now, that doesn't mean that geographically it has to be everywhere, but there is an analysis gone on that says actually these are the important places in which we want to focus within our geography. Because if it's taken account of the totality of the place, it's got so much more chance of succeeding as part of the mainstream agenda. And the partnerships point, and this is perhaps an area along with health where we have pushed back slightly, is being absolutely sure that the partnerships that are being evidenced in level 1, which is the stage that we've been at, are committed partnerships. The people sat round the table haven't just come together in order to fulfill the criteria of the application form. And I'm not suggesting that has been the case, because it hasn't. But we've sought assurance that these are partnerships that are committed, are rooted, and are really up for it. And I often use the phrase, actually, one needs to work in partnership when you don't need to. You actually get to know people, you get the relationships right without the pressure of the here and now. And that really, when that comes through strongly, then actually the accreditation is a very positive move that's going forward. The last thing I'd say is that, and to all those on this webinar who haven't yet come forward for level 1, is the more places, the more towns and cities that come forward and achieve it, the more valuable the accreditation is, because it becomes part of the currency of how a place is viewed, how it is run, how it's experienced, and how it is judged as a place in which to live, to visit, and in which to invest. So, I chair it because I'm enthusiastic about it. But having overseen a city for best part of 12 years, which was blessed actually with 50% of the area being rural and 1/3 of its area being national park. But in some respects, that made me realise how important those assets are to how you run the place socially and financially. I come to it with that lens, but with that enthusiasm. And I chair, as I said at the start, a very enthusiastic and committed panel. So that's me, that's the panel. Hayley, should I just slide into the next bit, or do you want to do some scene setting?
No, John, you go for it, please.
Okay, so we have 25 minutes left together. So we'll keep this quite snappy. I'd just like to ask 3 colleagues who presented earlier 2 or 3 questions, just to get under the skin of some of this, and perhaps to add some further value to what people perhaps want to know. And the first one is quite a generic one. What was the motivation for your town and city to engage with this initiative? Rather than wait for someone to break the silence, I'm going to say, Simon, you'd like to just say something. What was the motivation?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think for us, I mean, it's, the motivation from us was we very much saw the benefit of this, and I think has been mentioned in terms of raising the profile of our places and those partnerships, and promoting ourselves as a viable opportunity, I think, for people to work with us, whether that be through direct investment in, improving people's access to nature, improving people's health and well-being. I think that overarching, I suppose, aspect of this accreditation was something that was really there for us. We've been accredited as a tree city of the world for a number of years now, and that's really helped raise the profile of the city, I think, in terms of its urban forest, and has provided us opportunities to engage with other people on that basis, so to share learning. So both of those things I think have been really valuable. And as, again, I suppose the final thing will be as a promotional tool for that conversation with our elected members as well, to sort of reinforce the value of the work that we're doing, and the fact that that is recognised independently by others as being, of good quality.
Thank you. Janna?
Sorry, I keep forgetting the most important thing is to unmute. I think similar. We've really valued the work that we've been able to do this last couple of years, all the different aspects of it, that getting the strategies right, getting the environmental justice mapping right, that kind of thing. And we wanted to celebrate that, and Nature Towns and Cities gave us a platform to do that. It gives a higher profile to that work, to promote it, as Simon's just said, with members and leadership. We've got a session in a couple of weeks for all stakeholders across the council. How do you consider nature in all the decisions that you make? And I don't think we would have got people to that sort of meeting if we didn't have this reassurance that we've done the right work, that work is valuable, and we could kind of sing about it. Yeah, I think that would summarize it.
And it's a powerful example of how this engages a wider constituency. Chris?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, Simon and Janna said an awful lot of the same. Just for us, that echoes that. I think for one other additional one, sort of slightly different take on that is the kind of the movement, the bigger kind of like piece. I think we're all, I'm sure we're in similar circumstances from a local authority perspective, or for any kind of on third sector as well. We're in a place where we're working really hard to kind of like do all these pieces, a very complex sort of system to kind of change and evolve. So I think being part of a bigger movement, tapping into resources, expertise, experience, and kind of sharing that kind of as part of a wider community of practice is really important, and gives us sort of a really big foundation, hopefully, to share that around, so that we can all share and kind of like build the movement to achieve kind of, I'm sure, what are all kind of very similar aims for everybody who's kind of on this call.
Thank you. Okay, so I mean, Simon, just coming to you. I mean, you're some way into this now. What changes have taken place since you perhaps first decided to go for accreditation compared to now? What's different?
I think there's some of the aspects of our sort of working across directorates has improved considerably. I think we've there's a number of things that have come together at the same time: the review of our local plan, the accreditation, and the development of our City of Nature plan. Some of the working with our highways colleagues, the extended general biodiversity duty coming out of the Environment Act. All of these things have come together, I suppose, almost as a bit of a perfect storm. It's really highlighted those opportunities, and I think having that opportunity through the Future Parks Accelerator and the development of the City of Nature plan and going into this accreditation has given us the opportunity to sort of communicate more and learn a bit more common language between ourselves across those directorates. So we can talk with our highways colleagues a bit more confidently about their projects and lever in our benefits into their work at the same time. And I say the development of our our revision of our local development plan, I think, has really sort of brought these things together and has allowed us to embed those in, like using that accreditation as a bit of a lever to get it into there.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned highways there, and Chris mentioned planning earlier. I mean, they're two immensely powerful levers that local authorities have, statutory levers in terms of investment and decision-making levers. And I think if this accreditation is enabling even more constructive conversations with the keepers of those two levers, then it's going to be an increasingly powerful way of working. I might come back to others to comment on that question in a second. We'll see how the time goes. But Janna, perhaps I can ask you, it's early days. I think we all recognise it's early days, but what impact are you already seeing, if any, from the Nature Town City initiative? And where do you see it heading for you in the future?
I got an email this morning that said, being able to say BCP is an accredited nature town or nature townser is a great starting point to explaining why we want to plant more trees, have more meadows, and are supporting projects and opportunities for nature recovery. It's the wrapper around everything that we are doing. And I'm not going to read the rest of it because it's a bit too brown nosy for others on this call, but it was just a really funnily timed thing. I think it was a real boost for internal teams. It was just really nice. We were in the Guardian, and that doesn't happen very often. Different types of external conversations, hopefully an air of a bit of credibility. Approaches from investors. We haven't been able to turn a lot of that into actual hard cash yet, but we have had a lot more interesting conversations with investors. I think we're being braver about the information that we put out about how we can work with investors. That's just not something that we're commonly used to doing. So I think it's given us the confidence to do it. Ambition, ability to evidence the whys of a project, which really helps. Yeah, telling people that we're doing sensible, impactful things and that we will spend their money well. I just think it sends that message, and that's something that's really important. So that, because a couple of the questions in the chat, which I won't get into because I'm sure you're going to raise them later, but they are about, how does this turn into money, and have we considered the different sort of private sector markets. And I guess we're just very much trying to line ourselves up to do that well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of public funding, the big money lies elsewhere. But if this initiative can be utilised to demonstrate the impactful benefit of that big money being spent in a different way, to get mutual positive outcomes, and that's bound to be an all-round winner. Great email to receive this very morning. Thank you. But when you were reading that, I felt like a very happy man, I have to tell you, because I think that sort of boosts what the panel firmly believes in as well. Again, I might come back to that, see how time goes. But simple question, and perhaps come to you, Chris. You've got an eager audience here. Top tips to pass on to others who are working towards accreditation?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get an email this morning giving me the answer to this question, so I can't share that with you. Sorry. I think I tried to kind of point to a few of those in my 10 minutes earlier. There's a whole wealth of different kind of elements to consider, I think. But if just to pick up maybe the top three here, I think the first point I would say is make sure you've kind of got a download of what the accreditation criteria are. I think there's a lot of time was spent, and our sort of Future Parks cohort helped to inform kind of what that looked like and shape that. Take some time to consider that. I think what we did, which I think was really helpful, was we kind of did a first go at kind of taking those accreditation criteria and kind of almost self-assessing ourselves against that. Where do we sit? What have we currently got that's already in play? And I think don't overthink some of that stuff. This hasn't got to be kind of ground breaking the completely new ground. So we're probably already doing lots of pieces of things which are there for accreditation. So don't forget those things. Make sure that you do kind of incorporate those into that initial sort of self-assessment, and it'll start to identify where your gaps are. And I think the next bit, I think there's a comment in the question in the chat there around capacity to do this. Absolutely. We're all kind of probably at a point where there's a challenge in capacity to do this. So then start to kind of have some conversations with your team and think about who you can bring together, maybe as a kind of working group, and bring together maybe some other sort of internal colleagues. You can put a little bit of time to that and kind of really think about what does that look like, map that out. What will it take you to get to sort of maybe kind of filling those gaps and building up towards that accreditation. Don't think you've got to do it overnight. Kind of really kind of make a plan, work to it, and kind of bring on board some resource that's there. Obviously, additional funding kind of helps to that, resource that, but there will be people with motivation, and don't forget, people we're all highly motivated to want to achieve this, so do use that in a sensible way.
Thanks, Chris. I was just thinking as you start speaking there that if you're on this call, this webinar today, you're probably ready for this. And you're using the criteria to self-assess. It will not only sort of reflect back the great work that you're already doing in your town and your city, but also the gaps where you can work across the piece to bring it forward. I suspect no one on this call is at a standing start. Hayley, we've got 12 minutes left together. I suggest perhaps I hand back to you for more open questions, although I'll happily continue, but I suspect you'd probably rather get the speaking bat on that.
Thanks, John. Those are great questions. Thank you so much. I'd like to get the audience a bit more involved now. So I've just been looking through some of the questions in the chat. So perhaps we could go to some of those questions. If you do want to ask a question, now is the time. So you can raise your hand or pop your question in the chat. I'm going to start with one for Chris, if that's okay. This is from Sam Woods. How did your nature and people plan integrate with your local nature recovery strategy? Hearing a lot about growth and health, but not much on nature recovery.
Yes, that's a good question, Sam. Thank you. Yeah, in 10 minutes, I'll kind of focused a little bit more on the kind of people side rather than the nature side. But our plan is kind of very much kind of linked to kind of that broader nature recovery network agenda. In terms of the actual kind of connecting with I mean, every place will be different. So Plymouth's position is we're a supporting authority in a Devon-wide local nature recovery strategy. So, actually geographically, quite a small part of that wider county kind of picture. So we've played into that work into the work that Devon led on a county level. Similarly, though, we've picked up a piece of work which is done much more at a kind of granular scale. So we've produced our own nature recovery network mapping, but it's following the same LNRS process. So there's a kind of interconnectivity there. So that does run through our plan for nature and people, some of the key targets, kind of, and outcomes we want to achieve in terms of getting towards the 30 by 30 target, in terms of so we need to kind of improve and get some of our 5% more. Basically, we're at 25% now. We're going to get that to 30%. So that kind of runs through the theme of our nature rich city pillar within our plan. But yeah, I didn't talk too much around that in that 10 minutes, but it is in there. But that will be kind of a key element kind of for those ongoing conversations with planning colleagues and kind of thinking about how we implement that, particularly alongside growth agendas and kind of their local plan revisions now. So yeah, that's kind of a very, very live and constant piece of work which we continue to work on.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris. So we've got a couple of comments from Phil Burton. Phil, would you like to come off mute and ask a question?
Yeah, hi. Great presentations, by the way. Yeah, in conversations that I sort of have with other teams and local authorities, it's all about money, and the public purse, as has been pointed out, isn't there at the moment. And there's clearly a role for philanthropy and private business within these urban environments. And I know, talking to Simon in the past, there's a challenge to actually corral an effort around that, and also having conversations with a crisis communicator who works for a FT top 100 sort of a C-suite, as she described it. And she was telling me that you need to get into the psychology of those businesses, and you need to then look at a marketing approach that is taking the strategy that's being developed now, as we've heard today, and then trying to unlock what it is that those businesses can do. But it does need a sort of like a considered and a sort of a strategic wide sort of approach to be able to tackle that, and that doesn't happen sort of overnight, and it requires a bit of sort of ground testing. But I wonder whether some of the accreditation sort of projects out there and nature cities in general are going to be helping with that unlocking of that. That's an open question to all three, really.
I'm happy to come in first. I mean, there's probably a question here for maybe the national team to talk about this, Phil, but it's a great question. I mean, from our point of view, then absolutely we see the nature towns and cities kind of accreditation as a really key gateway into that work, ensuring that kind of there's that ability to aggregate at scale. Any investor, depending on which angle they come from, is potentially going to want a slightly different product or kind of service delivered. So kind of thing, we've already sort of started those conversations with the team nationally around how do we do that work from a local perspective to a national perspective, start to kind of knit together and kind of orchestrate some of those investment propositions for particular investors. Yeah, we're doing that as well at kind of a local level. We're just building up off the back of our plan for nature people, building up a case for support, which kind of picks out kind of what those key kind of areas of investment might be, which will go into our investment prospectus, which will link in with that national work. So yeah, absolutely kind of see this as a really key advantage of the nature town cities work, is that it enables us as local authorities to kind of do that at scale.
Right, thanks, Chris. I mean, what I asked also ties into the second point I made later on in the chat, is about the long-term commitment to a long-term vision, and you see that in Copenhagen and Paris and Singapore. They've been thinking along these lines since the 80s, 90s, and it's all in place. And I know the funding is obviously constrained to like across, like a 5-year sort of period. Yeah, it needs that commitment and that cross politics within a local authority to kind of like join up and make this work into the future, because then that helps align the funding, doesn't it, coming through amongst these corporate sort of routes.
You want to come in, Victoria?
Thanks. I completely agree, Phil, on that kind of long-term commitment, and I think that's one of the things we've taken into the design of the accreditation scheme. This, that's what the evidence is looking for, is that how is nature for the benefit of people and place and nature embedded into a place's priorities, whether that's the corporate priorities of a local authority or the priorities and the activities and the plans more generally of a whole suite of actors in that place. And I think that's what we've seen from the three speakers today about how that long-term commitment is kind of, I guess, showing up in those things, but also how it's articulated too. Just on your first point, I think Chris has given a great answer to that. How are we as a national team supporting places? It is about that, that case for support across a wide variety of investors in the broadest sense of the word, who are looking for potentially quite a wide variety of kind of outcomes and impact. But we're working closely with our accredited places and with those on the pathway to make sure that we can help with that, and that we can also articulate that at a national level in an aggregated way, so that we can make that compelling argument for large scale investment that might then get directed locally. I think the really short answer to your question about that compelling marketing approach has got to be about the resilience, particularly when we're talking about the private sector. Resilience is important generally, but when we're talking about business, it's got to be about impacting on the resilience of that business, and that's one of the things we're looking at really closely.
Great, good.
Hayley, if I can just add very briefly, I think it's quite interesting that the sort of language has moved from funding to investment, because it's a different sort of mindset. And my experience is that when people are looking to invest in a place, whether it's commercial investment or philanthropic, they're looking for three things. One is clarity, second is stability, and the third is long term. And I think the criteria of the accreditation is designed to pull that out and to drive it forward, and perhaps in some cases becomes the catalyst for local partners to make a long-term commitment that they haven't previously made. So it's a great question, Phil, and I think this is designed to move from, if you like, project to program to strategic investment. Thanks.
Right, thanks all. It's good.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left. I wonder if we've got time to squeeze in one more question. I'm just looking in the chats from Ivan Clark, who works at Nature Scot. We are working towards a Scottish version of accreditation. Ivan, I wonder if you wanted to come on off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, I can do, Hayley. Yeah, so it was really just about, we've been doing quite a lot of engagement with green space managers and so on in Scotland recently. And the feedback we get quite often is when we're talking about kind of more place-based management of parks and green spaces, we don't have, we barely have the capacity to, cut the grass and just do the basic things on the bill of works, and never mind writing management plans and thinking about, the community the park's serving or what it could be in the future, and so on and so forth. And there's obviously a very small handful of local authorities that have got the NTC funding. So what's the kind of, where do they find that time and that extra capacity to do some of this more strategic thinking? Well, that's the message we're getting back. There's no easy answer, I know, but if anyone's got anything to suggest.
I'm happy to come in on this one. I'm not sure. I think hearing from some of our local authority partners will be good, so I'll be brief. But I think as far as possible, we've tried to design the accreditation criteria so that it is things that are happening anyway. I am not naive in suggesting that it's not, that it's not going to be any extra work, but I hope and that as far as possible, these are things that are happening anyway, or there's an ambition to happen anyway. So that, I think that's the short answer. But also we hope that the prize at the end, in terms of thinking about that longer term sustained funding, is perhaps worth that initial upfront, if we're not overusing this word, investment in time. So yeah, but perhaps some of our local authority representatives on the call will be better placed to answer that.
Simon?
Yeah, thanks. I think there's a few things there. I think and yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough, to benefit from that Future Parks Accelerator funding. So I can't say that the money didn't play a big part in that. I think one thing that I did sort of bring to the fore was actually the amount of data that other partners within our local authority already had that we could draw in. So actually, we didn't need to go and create that data, or it was some of the data sets and some of the bits of work were already there. So with our public health colleagues, our highways colleagues, planning development colleagues, it was about pulling that together. So that was not as much work as perhaps might have been. Our urban forest master plan, which we produced sort of almost at the same time as this, we actually did that as a co-created document. So it was our community organisation, Birmingham Tree People, that actually led on the creation of that with us as a partner. So that only required a small amount of funding, much less than it would have done for us to commission something separately to develop that plan. So I suppose it's about how far people want to go and how much, I suppose, they want to relinquish some responsibility to other community organisations to help develop those plans. So that was one of the things we did anyway, to sort of try and get over that. And for our City of Nature plan, we also, through our umbrella community friends of groups, use them to have put an officer in place to sort of act as our community coordinator. So that cost us probably less than it would have done to do ourselves, but provided quite a big bit of capacity within there. So it still costs a little bit, but not as much as sort of internally commissioning or delivering.
Thanks, Simon. Jackie, are you coming in on this question, or have you got another question?
No, it's along the same one. It was just say we're again in fortunate position. We have got the funding. We very much were in the position where we hadn't got the office time. We hadn't got the strategic direction. We were very much doing the grounds maintenance side, and that we hadn't got that capacity at that strategic level, which is where the NTC funding is going to make a massive difference to us. What I would say though is, through another call I was on, and something where I think Russell has got it right, is the Director of Public Health led our bid. Public Health currently fund our Healthy Spaces team, which is the team that was or is looking after the green space from a people side. So not the maintenance, but the access, the events, the activities, and the development. That team is being split up, but they are looking at still having a resource within public health around nature and health. And I think for all other local authorities, I appreciate it's difficult with a 3-tier system, but I do think having public health and having an officer within there, whether it's the director or whether they can get a post that sits there that understands the importance of nature and access to green space and the impacts on health, I think that's the key. I think that's the link, and I think that's the one that's going to help us in future with the funding and getting that strategic overview in place. I think that's where it's going to have to sit.
Thanks, Jackie. Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We are running about 3 minutes over, but I think it's totally worth it because the presentations have been fantastic. What a wealth of information. just, yeah, brilliant, really good questions. So sort of the next steps, if you would like to find out more, please do have a look at some of the links. I believe Kate's been putting some links in the chat. So we've got the links to our Nature Towns and Cities website, to our accreditation page, to our resources page. Please do go and have a look on there. There is so much information. Also, if you want to find out more about accreditation specifically, do come to one of my accreditation support sessions. The next one is in a couple of weeks. Again, Kate, I'm hoping you're going to pop a link in the chat for that one. They are designed to be led by you, really. So you can, if you've got questions beforehand, you can submit them. I can tailor those sessions around what you need to know. Yes, access to the recording. Yeah, we will let you know when that's available. And yeah, just a really big thank you to all the speakers and for everybody who's joined, taking the time this morning. Victoria, have you got any comments before we finish?
No, just a really thank you everybody for coming along and for your interest in accreditation, and we hope to see you soon at something else accreditation related or one of the other events or activities. And on John's behalf, I think he's looking forward to seeing your accreditation application soon. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks very much. Bye. Did you want us to hang on or?